Political correctness strengthens Isil, exposing radical Islam. Political correctness strengthens Isil, exposing radical Islam. Thank you for tuning in to Laurel at the Black Political Buzz Network. On today's video, I want to discuss the political ideology of political correctness. The term political correctness is actually a political ideology. And the Webster's dictionary defines political correctness is an idea in which one agrees with someone else's idea as to not offend a group of people or a group of people who behave a certain way or have certain beliefs. So Webster's dictionary defines political correct being correct politically or politically correct as being as agreeing with a group of people or agreeing with someone or agreeing with someone's ideas as to not offend, someone based upon their beliefs, not to offend a group of people based upon their beliefs. So, for example, now maybe I didn't, maybe that I didn't say that so fluently, but you get what I'm saying. For example, the mainstream media, knowing that radical Islam does exist, but they're afraid to use the terminology radical Islam, based upon being ordered not to use or say those words or say that phrase by the federal government, telling the mainstream media, you better not say the term radical Islam, or I'm going to come down and send someone from the FTC or the FCC to find your network, find you a bunch of money. I'm going to send auditors and spies into your newsrooms to shut you down, or to put people in jail, or to falsely accuse you of corruption or some other mess. So you better not use the terminology radical Islam when you're reporting stories about Muslims and terrorism, because if you do, you're going to pay the price. So you better agree with us, the federal government, and not say the words radical Islam if you want to stay in business on the air, and you want the sponsors, you want the huge rich sponsors to keep coming to buy airtime on your network, on your channel. So thus you have the network CEO, the network president, and the journalists of that network, CNN, refusing to say radical Islam when they know it's radical Islam, out of fear of the government cracking down on them. So being correct politically, being political correct, means that you're agreeing with someone's idea out of fear, basically, or based upon, or you're agreeing with someone's behavior is not to offend a certain group of people. So you don't want to offend the radical Muslims. Now, most Muslims, most moderate Muslims, or most Muslims in general, they too condemn radical Islamic behavior. They too condemn terrorist groups like Isil. Yet, the federal government, our current administration, federal government, and the mainstream media, they're afraid to use the terminology radical Islam out of fear of being fined, or punished by the FTC, the FCC, and the federal government sending monitors and spies into the newsrooms to quelch freedom of speech. That's what it is. When the Obama administration sends the FCC or spies and monitors into the newsrooms, it's to quelch freedom of speech. Because if you're telling a news network not to use the words radical Islam, you're quelching freedom of speech, which is freedom of speech is listed in the U.S. Constitution as a right. The U.S. Constitution lists freedom of speech as a right. But yet, the media, the mainstream media networks can't say it. Why? Political correctness. It's politically correct not to call a radical Islamic terrorist a radical Islamist. It's politically correct to say that someone who is practicing radical Islam, to say that's what it is, radical Islam, because you don't want to offend the Muslims. When most Muslims, they too agree that radical Islam is wrong. Most Muslims agree that the practice of radical Islam is not a true Islamist practice. It's more politics than anything else. Radical Islam is not based upon the true tenets of Islam, which are peace. Islam is a faith. Islam is a real, bona fide faith. The tenets of Islam are peace. Not blowing up each other. Not suicide bombers. Not terrorizing a whole nation or a whole community or a whole state or a whole country. Or chopping someone's head off. That's not true Islam. At least, now I'm a born again Christian. But I have people in my family who are followers of Islam, and they're peaceful people. They're not mean, hateful, nasty, want to chop someone's head off type people. And I've also communicated with many people in America who are followers of Islam. Some of these people I talk to are from the Middle East. They're natives of the Middle East. Some people I talk to are Americans who converted to Islam. People outside of my family. I talk to people outside of my family who are from the Middle East who follow Islam. People outside of my family who are Americans who converted to Islam, and they all tell me that Islam, the tenets of it, are peaceful. But yet, you have some idiots out here who have perverted the tenets, the true tenets of Islam, and made it violent for political purposes. They're doing these people who are engaged in radical Islam. They perverted the true tenets of Islam, which is peaceful, into violence, and they use it to intimidate for politics. It's being done for political purposes, to intimidate. Like what Isil is doing. Isil is coming out here claiming to be followers of Islam when actually Isil members have perverted the true tenets of Islam, made it violent, and using it to intimidate people for political purposes, for their own personal gain, which is for money and power. So Isil has perverted true Islam, turned it into a violent practice, that turned into a violent daily practice, and using Islam or radical Islam for their own personal gain, which is money and power. They're intimidating people, killing people to get money and power. So it's not about faith or peace. It's about bow down to us. ISIL wants you to bow down to them for power and money. ISIL is out here kidnapping women, raping women, beheading women, recruiting young men. ISIL is out here recruiting young men, enticing them, lying to these young men, getting them to join the ISIL organization, the ISIL terrorist group, for money. Telling them, oh, we'll take care of you and your family if you come and follow. We'll make sure that that you are, more fervent followers of, Muhammad. We're going to teach you the highest tenets of Muhammad. Take you to a new high in Islam. And then those young men who ISIL has recruited, they get over there to the Middle East in those training camps, and they find out it's not what they thought it was. They find out, hey, this is not about Islam. This is about murder. This is about craziness. This is about power and money. And then those young men, some of them try to get away, and ISIL members kill them. They behead them too. But see, we can't talk about that because President Obama's administration tells the mainstream media, oh, let's be politically correct and not expose, or say the words radical Islam. Even though most true Muslims Most true Muslims, they don't condone what Isil is doing. They condemn Isil's behavior too. And they don't, and most true Muslims, they themselves have said that what Isil is practicing, that's not true Islam. That's radical Islamic behavior being used for politics, to intimidate people for politics. But yet we can't say radical Islam because we're scared. That's why I like Donald Trump. The man has a backbone. We have to use common sense. We have to use common sense. We have to not be afraid. This is America. This is America, the USA, the greatest nation on planet Earth, whom God has blessed. God has blessed this country. And he doesn't want us to be afraid of a terrorist group or some terrorist groups like Isil and Hamas or Al-Qaeda or Taliban, the Taliban. We should be standing up to them and showing them that, hey, we're better than that. We don't have to behead you or intimidate you. We're not going to force you into believing what we believe, by beheading you or mistreating you. Even though ISIL members, that's what they believe. They believe, hey, if you don't want to bow down and, practice radical Islam and do what we say do, we're going to chop your head off. But in America, we can show them a better way. And not be afraid to them, not bow down to their intimidation by being afraid to say the words radical Islam. Because when you choose, as I said in a previous video, as I mentioned in a previous video about Brussels, about that Brussels attack that happened recently in Brussels, Belgium, in which ISIL claimed responsibility for, when you refuse to use the word radical Islam, you are doing true followers of Islam a disservice. Because true followers of Islam, they condemn what ISIL is doing. Political correctness, it makes ISIL stronger. I repeat, being politically correct makes ISIL stronger. We should not be making ISIL a more powerful terrorist organization by refusing to say the words radical Islam. Shame on networks like NBC and CNN for refusing to use the words radical Islam and for strengthening ISIL in their terrorist practices, which is being used for politics, power, money, control. It's not about peace. It's not about true Islam. Shame on NBC and CNN for feeding into ISIL's propaganda by making people think that if you say the words radical Islam, it's going to offend the people who are followers of Islam. It's not going to offend them. Saying the phrase radical Islam does not offend true followers of Islam. They say it too. True followers of Islam, many of them are saying the same thing. That's not true Islam. That's radical Islamist behavior. And they condemn it. So why is our government not condemning it? Why is President Obama not condemning it? Why is CNN and NBC not condemning it? Political correctness strengthens ISIL. We need to continue to expose ISIL and then defeat ISIL. I repeat, political correctness strengthens ISIL. We need to continue to expose ISIL and defeat ISIL quickly. Thank you for tuning in to Laurel at the Black Political Buzz Network. And my name is Laurel. And this is Black Political Buzz. Goodbye. Goodbye, and God bless you. God bless America. And God bless the U.S. military. Goodbye.